Okay, so now we've handled the UI logic for our registration component with a custom hook here. It should be easy enough to do the same thing for the login component, right? We just head to this login component, pop it open. First things first, let's change this to an absolute import, make our lives easier. And we'll just do that across the application as we go through and refactor things. Then let's create a new hook. Let's say touch a, source hooks use login form.js. Cool. So I have all of my logic here in this login component, and I have my new use login form component. And honestly, I could go ahead and just do this all for you right here and replace all the disparate logic in this login component with our centralized use login form. But I think it would probably benefit you more to try and do this yourself. I mean, you already have an example from the use registration form that's going to be pretty much identical in many ways to this use login form hook. So I would say take a few moments, pause this video, and give it a shot yourself. Then when you're ready, come back here and we'll walk through it. Okay. Tried it out. Hopefully it wasn't too much of a challenge, but let's look at what we're trying to do here first. Cool? So the first thing we want to do is let's just grab all of our imports like we did before and throw them into the use login form component. We also aren't going to need this link because that's associated with the DOM. And then let's export a function, const use login form. It should take in user and set user just like our other one did. And then it should grab all of that logic from the login component. Let's just grab it all of this. I would like you. Thank you. Great. Come here, please. Go right there. And then we will return. Honestly, I think we're returning the exact same thing. Let me check. No, that's not what I need. Let's look here. Let's just try this out. Let's just grab everything here and go to our use login form. And let's see if it works. Is that everything here? Yeah, cool. It doesn't look like I have any errors. I'm going to save this and then head into my login component and get rid of everything just like we did before. You know what? I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to copy paste, do a nice little copy paste work here. Thank you. And thank you. And then I'm going to place use registration form with use login form from hooks / use login form. Just like that. Then I'm going to get rid of everything here because we don't need it. And I'm going to say const form errors is processing. And what is it, like handle on input change and handle on submit. See, it's already ready for me. Look at that. Use login form user set user. And I'm going to save it. And I'm going to check out if there are any errors. The answer is no. That's great. All we did is we just literally extracted all the logic from the component, placed it into our custom hook, exposed whatever values we want the consumer of our hook to use right here by returning them. And again, this is just a function that handles a bunch of state and uses a bunch of other React hooks together. It just composes React hooks, use effect and use state hooks into a single hook, and then exposes whatever information we need to the consumer of the hook. And so that's really nice. And again, notice how this is almost identical to our use registration form hook. They're almost the same thing. So, looking at them, it kind of makes sense. Do we really need to do this? What was the point of this? Why did we just extract all that logic when we could have just left it there? And well, one of the reasons is this isn't magic, you know? It might work like magic, but it's not. It's just composition of functions. We're just taking functions and we're composing them together to make a larger function. It's just composition of functions and React hooks. Just remember that that's all we're really doing. We're just taking functions and we're putting them inside other functions. We simply combine a few use state hooks here, the use effect hook, and also, by the way, this is a good time to explore that this use navigate hook is also a custom hook that the people who created React Router DOM, the authors of the React Router DOM library, created to help with programmatic navigation so that we can navigate somewhere whenever we want. Just like that. Let's use user.username, since we did the same thing in the other hook. And so that's all this use navigate hook is. So we can take a custom hook from another library, the use state hooks that we already know and understand from React, and this use effect hook. So custom hooks offer so many advantages that I tend to use them for pretty much every component that requires even like mildly complex logic. First, I'll write the component with simple use state and use effect hooks like we did previously. And then as soon as I see things starting to get like a little bit unwieldy, I'll extract all that logic into a custom hook and keep my components as clean as possible. Because doing this makes it really clear, like, hey, all my data is coming from here, and all my UI stuff is being handled here. And that's just a really nice separation of concerns for me. And I know, by the way, there's no ambiguity about what this use whatever represents. Because if you have a ton of use effects and a ton of use states in a single component, you're kind of not sure what each one does. But here, we know what this whole package does. This whole hook handles all login form logic. If we wanted to break it down, we probably could into like, hey, I want to handle just form logic. Cool. We could do that. And then maybe handle submit logic and change that up also. We could totally do that too. Now, the other benefit to them is it's actually relatively trivial to compose multiple custom hooks so that we can share logic between components. And that's actually one of the benefits that the React docs tout for custom hooks. So let me show you what I mean. So again, like notice how this use login form and use registration form are like really similar. Look at like even if I just switch between them, they're almost identical other than that this use login form is dealing with more inputs, right? Like wouldn't it be nice if we could extract all this duplication and just share some logic between both of these custom hooks so that each one uses the same logic but then switches it up slightly for each form? Let's try it out. Let's create a new hook here called source hooks. Let's call this one use authentication form.js. And this use authentication form.js hook is going to deal with all of the custom logic that is shared between the use login form hook and the use registration form hook. So I'm going to export const use authentication, I can't spell, authentication form equals a user set user. Come on, there we go, fantastic. And then I'm going to say, I think we need probably all of the stuff from here. And boom. Okay, cool. Now, looking at this, let's see what exactly our use authenticate or like our two authentication form hooks share in common. First of all, let's just like copy paste everything here and then take a look at it. So the first thing is like the handle on submit is going to be different for each hook, right? Because here we're using this sign up user function, and in the login form we're using the login user function. So clearly the handle on submit functions are different. So let's actually take that out of our use authentication form hook. Okay. And like in determining what to return at least, or like what should go in here. Now for both forms, they have a use effect hook that makes sure that if the user is logged in, we redirect them, right? So that can stay. In terms of what goes inside the form, well, interestingly enough, like we can actually share this form too, since the email and password are in both forms, we can just provide that to the consumer, and if it wants to use the username and password to confirm, it will. Otherwise, it won't. So we can actually just copy all of this and keep that the same as well here, and so that our use login form and use registration forms can just share this whole section right here. And in fact, since the handle on input change is almost identical for both the use login form, other than that this handles specific cases for emails and this handles specific cases for updating emails and password confirms, we can use that exact same stuff there too. So everything that's in here currently, we can just keep how it is. Now notice a few things here. Like we actually don't need the API client anymore. We don't need to set the user anymore. So that doesn't need to accept that. And we don't have to worry about processing is processing. So we'll leave all of that out. But everything else we can return in this hook right here. So we can return the form, we can return errors, we can return set errors, and handle on input change. Yeah. So this use authentication form hook is now encompassing all of the logic that's shared between our use registration form hook and our use login form hook. So the cool thing about that is then we can go into both of these, like this use login form hook here, and we can just get rid of everything it doesn't need. So we can say, okay, cool. Like you no longer need to use this use navigate hook since our use authentication form is going to handle that for us. And let's import that hook so we can see it in action. Use authentication form hook from hooks/use authentication form. Cool. Now remember that this one is handling the form, the errors, the set errors, and the what is a handle on input change? Yeah. Equals use authentication form, and it takes in what? A user. So then we just pass the user right here. And now we no longer need this. We no longer need this. This use effect is already handled. And we no longer need this because our use authentication form hook is handling that. We can also get rid of this one right here. Boom. So now this hook is much smaller and it only deals with a few small, simple things. Cool. Let's do the same thing in the use registration form hook. Here we can actually just get rid of, I'm just going to go ahead and preemptively get rid of everything I don't think it needs, which is all of this stuff right here, this right here. Get rid of this one, and let's just copy from the use login form. We know that it imports the hook, just like so, and then it uses that hook, just like so. Bam. And just like that, again, this hook is also now only 45 lines, not even. And we can save this, and hopefully everything still works exactly the same. So let's give it a shot. I don't see any errors here. Let's see if we can log out and log back in again with Kermit at thefrog.io. Password is password. Make sure login still works. Cool. Login still works. Okay. Let's make sure sign in or sign up still works also. So we'll sign up. We'll say enter email. Let's do person at person.io. Username is person. Password is password. Confirm password is password. Let's make sure we can sign up also. Oh, okay. Other person. Great. And it works. So, again, let's go over this really quickly. What we've done here is we have taken this use authentication form hook and all of the logic that's shared between our login form and our registration form is encapsulated in this use authentication form hook. And then our use login form hook is calling the use authentication form hook to grab all of the data that it exposes so that it can then take all that data and expose whatever the login form needs. And so we're now composing multiple functions into each other to provide this login component with exactly the data it needs. And each of these is responsible for only handling exactly the part of the application that it is responsible for. So this is like a really, really powerful concept. Now, I'm not going to lie, it's also a complicated one. This is like not an easy thing to grasp initially if you've never done function composition like this. So if this is a little bit over your heads, don't worry, it's an advanced concept. But before I get too excited and like start talking my head off about all the cool things that you can do with this, let's go ahead and save our work here and head into the next video. So I'm going to git status, git add, git commit, created, use login form, and composed use hook, custom hook, and composed use authentication form custom hook. And there we go.